curious, given that this is an election year and a lot of local newspapers are struggling massively, and some of the major national newspapers have been doing pretty well, but what role do brands have, thinking historically about the role of advertising with TV companies at least? When I went to school at Missouri, there was there was like a student newspaper there, and there was a big banner on one wall in the advertising division. It said like I forget the exact quote, but it's like, the money that fuels journalism, whatever. There's something more beautiful than that it was said. But I'm kind of curious, what role do brands play to help prop up the fourth estate right now versus giving money to maybe a successful ROI on Facebook, but it's killing journalism at the same time?
Let me start just because this is a passion project of mine. So let's go back to the Constitution, written 1788. In there, the only profession called out by name is journalism, and it has a role in the sort of checks and balances, and keeping in the First Amendment. At that time, virtually all journalism in the United States was advertising supported. Subscriptions were a concept that came into the world in the late 1600s in Western Europe, but hadn't really caught on in the United States. So implicit in the framers of the Constitution was this idea that journalism is part of our ecosystem and advertisers have a role, I would dare say have a responsibility, to continue to work in that environment. Now fast forward, we're in this most divisive era. We're all worried about brand safety. 49% of our customers voted for the other person, I mean the one in office. Sorry, please don't. And as a result, we're in this period where marketers are pulling away from advertising, and it's not just like, hey, news supporting journalism. It's not just like pulling out of news. Most marketers are using single keywords to suppress in programmatic, and some of the single keywords they're using to avoid news are Trump, president, impeachment, Pelosi, Congress. Have you watched the news lately? Right, so we're suppressing, we're actually throttling, we're throttling journalism at a time where I think in our history it's really important. It's exacerbated on the local level, where we've got a lot of markets today that have, I love the statistic, one or less newspapers serving them. Okay, one or less. So I think we're at a point where we really have to examine this particular environment. And the last thing I will say, in the research that we've done, person in the back of the room, the news audience is 6 times more likely to recall your ad and 5 times more likely to engage with your ad than a primetime audience. So there's a value here if you can do the hard work of ensuring brand safety, and I think there's a role here for marketers to support journalism. So I'm probably on the extreme end of the conversation.
Does that mean the Bank of America is going to do that?
We are spending 30 cents out of every digital dollar in news, and it is hard. It is hard from a brand safety perspective, and I've got 3 people who work on that full time now, which, when I started in this job, I would have never, thought about that. So it's hard, but and we're doing it because there's good value there. There's good audience engagement there. We're not doing it because we're on some mission. There's good value to be had.
My guess is that you're blacklisted from a lot of sites that maybe, and again, I don't know how you've set up your brand safety standards, but through machine learning, there's an awful lot of actual good content that is not being supported because of certain connotations and how those filters are being set up, and it's hurting some publishers out there because of it. On the other side of the coin, you have to have some of those stringent standards set up because you don't want the backlash of all these consumers. Why did you run here and there? So it's
a lot of work.
It's an awful lot of work. There are a lot of other places. What Lou talked about in terms of engagement. He's right. In the news, you can reach this constituency in a lot of other places as well. We've had certain clients that have said we don't want to be associated, and they've backed out, and it hasn't hurt their business. We've had certain clients that say we only want to run in these segments on these kind of editorial comments. And we have others that have stayed in and feel very strong about it. It's not a one-size-fits-all. I'm concerned about the ML and the ramifications of certain publications and publishers being eliminated because of just a word connotation.
Single keywords.
Lou's argument is goes back to the Constitution. So it's a 200 or 300-year-old argument. And with all due respect, I think this is a bubble conversation. So this is a conversation that plays well on the East Coast or the West Coast. I was looking at a heat map of America in 2016, the presidential election. the heat map measuring the degree to which there was a shift to the Republicans red as opposed to Democratic blue, and there's a little thin sliver of blue on the left-hand side and a thin sliver of blue on the right-hand side. The stuff in the middle is red, and Trump will remain president of this country.
Heard it here first.
Right? Yeah. And in Britain, look at look at what was the slogan in the election? Get Brexit done. That was it. Finished. And look at the majority. Unprecedented. You have to go back to the 1930s, I think it is, to see. So attention spans have been shortened. Even my media habits are less Buffettian and more Trumpian now.
Oh, you have a
I
child.
look at more visual, less reading. Yeah, I could deplore it at one level, but you see, I think Lou, life has changed, and I think what we fail to acknowledge, and that's one of the problems that.
I'm talking about journalism. I'm talking about what channel it comes in, Martin.
But this is not what that stuff in the middle of America or in the north of England, the Labour voters who went and voted Conservative, are worried about. It's not. We are so distant from that. We've lost the understanding of that. And I don't think, I disagree. I think the nature of communication has changed to such a vast degree to when your beloved Constitution was written that we have to change our view of it. And I think
So I don't disagree with that, but do you think anti-vaxxers should have a voice because they believe vaxxers, people who don't believe in vaccination against, let's just, we shouldn't try to educate them because they have their belief set. Is that your argument?
It's not an argument. I'm just saying that the people are entitled to their view. They can
Absolutely,
express it.
but
they're
they're entitled to be informed.
And I don't think that people are that foolish. I think people know when they turn on a news channel or read a newspaper or whatever it is that they have a certain bias.